Ketel Marte never showed up to Fenway. Now he's on the restricted list. The Diamondbacks have more questions than answers.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Diamondbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, George Lund, and today's episode is brought to you by Call Sheet. For a limited time, download the Call Sheet app and use code Locked On to get $10 when you trade 10. Now, I know there was a baseball game yesterday, but it didn't really feel like it. It felt like we were all distracted by what happened before the game, including the players based on how the result turned out. We'll talk about that game in particular a little later on in the show, but I think we definitely have to start with what happened before the game, a rare occurrence that we're going to talk about things and leads with things that had nothing to do with the game at hand. It was a bizarre night in Boston. Ketel Marte reportedly no-showed the Diamondbacks game against the Red Sox despite being in Boston, being on the team plane, being in the team hotel, and more importantly, expected to show up to the game. This was an unexcused absence, and according to Torey and some other insiders, the organization had very little communication with them. This is a completely different situation than just a normal injury absence, and the timing of everything with the Diamondbacks in the NL wildcard race, expecting their superstar second baseman to help them get there, made everything even more unusual. Now, what happened? I want to give you the timeline. I want to tell you what Torey thought. I want to break down this whole situation, give you my thoughts, because I do have a lot of thoughts about it. Ketel Marte, this isn't the first time that he's missed time for a weird occurrence, a weird kind of out of nowhere occurrence. So I do want to give you some timeline, some history on Ketel Marte first, but I want to tell you what happened. Now, the first thing that popped into my mind, Ketel Marte is not going to be able to suit up for this game against Boston. Well, on August 14th, he left the game with left knee soreness, but returned after one game off. This did not appear to be injury related. The way that it came in last minute, you would think that there would be some communication with Torey and that he would decide if he's out or if he's not in. Torey's very, he likes giving his guys off days, especially scheduled off days. He's very worrisome with a lot of his players. You know, Ketel Marte is a guy who's been injured a lot throughout his career. He's going to be careful. Torey knows his players. He's very close with his players, and there's a big reason that we'll talk about some of his thoughts and how I feel, you know, maybe Ketel Marte betrayed Torey a little bit in this specific scenario. But then right before Monday's games, things got weird. The lineup was unusually late. Nick Picoro tweeted that he believes this is one of the latest lineup cards that's gotten out to the media in his entire time covering the Diamondbacks. It happened at 3:58, just 12 minutes before first pitch. Arizona announced usually the Diamondbacks put out their lineup maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 hours before the game. There's not a lot of secrecy, and this was a really weird occurrence. And then we got the news on Twitter and all other sorts of social media. Jose Fernandez was recalled from AAA. Maybe at first thought, you look at the first line and you say, wow, Jose Fernandez got the call back up. He'd been tearing it up, down in AAA. Excited to see him get another opportunity after he was such a big story at the beginning of the season. But then you look at it, Ketel Marte was placed on the restricted list. Well, what happened to Ketel Marte? Why is Ketel Marte in the restricted list? We haven't heard any rumors, any rumblings about this. So what in the world happened? And to put some of the conspiracies to rest, I think some people were thinking that Jose Fernandez, the fact that he was there, the Diamondbacks had known about this in advance. I don't believe that was the case, according to a few sources, including Gambo. Jose Fernandez was in Boston in case the team had to place Nolan Arenado on the IL, which is why he was able to get the ballpark just before game time and start at third for the Diamondbacks and take Marte's roster spot. Per Gambo, obviously Arenado left Sunday's game with trunk discomfort, which is sort of a weird injury. Per Gambo, quote, have heard Nolan Arenado may try to grind through the injury. Nothing confirmed. He had an MRI today in Boston. If he can avoid the IR, that would be huge for the Diamondbacks, as he has 6 homers and 12 RBIs this month. But 7 minutes later, after that announcement that Fernandez and Marte, the coinciding move, 7 minutes later at 4:03, the lineup finally came out. Ildemaro Vargas was at second. Jordan Lawlar in his debut back from injury. He was at center. Jose Fernandez instantly thrusted into the lineup at third. But suddenly, we all had a lot more questions than answers. And per Steve Gilbert, this is finally when we knew what was going on, sort of. Ketel Marte did not show up here at Fenway Park tonight, and that is why he was placed on the restricted list. Up until close to game time, the Diamondbacks had hoped he would be here. Of course, A lot of panic instantly from seeing that tweet. Why is Ketel Marte not at the ballpark? Nick Pecora, like I mentioned, he reported that Marte arrived in Boston with the team and Arizona expected to be at designated hitter. So this wasn't a situation where Marte never made the trip. He simply did not show up to the ballpark. And the team didn't know until close to game time whether he would. Now, what does the restricted list mean? There's a lot of reasons to be confused about what even does that mean. Are they just shelving him? Is this an injured list situation? Well, the restricted list is used for players who are unavailable for personal, legal, or other baseball reasons. A lot of the times when guys get PED suspensions, you would go on the restricted list. So instantly you're thinking a personal situation. Did Ketel Marte get popped for PED and they had to scratch him in the last minute? A lot of theories went around on Twitter, and I'll kind of break some of those down and kind of the outrage that came from Ketel Marte. Torey Lovullo was extremely limited in what he could share after the game. It's been a crazy day. All I know is that he's dealing with a personal issue. We're trying to figure that out. He didn't show up today, and he was put on the restricted list. That's as much as I know right now. I'm sure in time we'll start to uncover and unravel some information. Lovullo said he knew something was going on that morning, but still expected Marte to report to Fenway. When asked if Marte was still in Boston, he said, "I believe so. I'm not too sure." Gambo reported that no one in the organization knew what personnel issue this was. The Diamondbacks believed Marte was at the team hotel, but couldn't confirm it. So there was clearly a lack of communication. That's what made the situation so strange. In my opinion, I think this is incredibly frustrating from Ketel Marte's stand. I mean, how many jobs are there in the world where you can completely miss work and not give your boss a reason? You were fired. In most cases, you're going to be fired. Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, maybe one of the only jobs where you can no show to work and you get a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, maybe 0.5% of your $10 million contract or whatever the case is. So it's really frustrating because as grownups, we have to communicate these kind of things. We all have jobs and we all have to communicate to our bosses in advance. In most cases in baseball, you can't just, "Hey, I'm injured, I can't come in today." That's not really the case. But in Major League Baseball, it is. So the lack of communication really stands out to me. Obviously, knowing that it's kind of a personal issue, that's what we definitely understand at this point in time. I don't want to assume. I don't want to be too critical because you never know what's going on with Ketel Marte. This isn't me saying shame on him for missing this game or whatever the case is. That would be a wrongful thing for me to say, like Diamondbacks fans, where he missed time back in that Dodgers series. But this is me saying that as a grown-up in your 30s, how can you not communicate something like this when you are relied upon as you're a team? You have a team behind you. You are a leader on this team. You make a boatload of money. You have to communicate with your coaches. And in this case, it felt like Torey Lovullo was trying his hardest to have Ketel Marte's back. He was trying to save him by, putting out the lineup last minute. Maybe he had to show up to the park 5-10 minutes before the game, whatever the case was. Obviously, if Torey Lovullo knew about it in the morning, but still waited to put out the lineup up until close to first pitch, he had maybe some sort of a feeling that he would show up. He was trying to save his back, but he wasn't able to do that. Now, beyond the situation, we don't really know what happened with Ketel Marte. We don't know the personal issue. We don't know why he no-showed. We don't know why he didn't communicate despite posting on his Instagram stories at about the middle of the day. So clearly he was on his phone. If you go back and look at his Instagram stories, he was reposting Corbin Carroll's National League Player of the Month, which we will talk about in the back half of the show. He was reposting stuff. He was active on social media. So it seems to me that there's no reason why he couldn't communicate Torey further what happened with the game. But I think Torey's post-game comments were probably the most telling part of the night because he was clearly trying to balance being frustrated while protecting Marte's privacy. He was really caught up. You could tell that he was emotional, but I couldn't help feel there was some frustration given in there. You don't usually see Torey as frustrated as he was while he was talking about the situation. It was a lot of uncertainty, and you could tell that definitely angered him, their frustration. They're in the middle of an NL wild card race, a playoff push. They're in this big series against the Boston Red Sox, one of the hotter teams in the big leagues right now. They're neck and neck with the Padres and the Phillies. Every game matters, and for his star player to sort of bring the attention away from what was supposed to be a positive day with Justin Martinez coming back, Jordan Lawlar coming back, and then it turned into this fiasco and they lose by 10 runs. I would be frustrated as a manager too, even if I had this close relationship with Ketel Marte. He said he first learned in the morning that there was a possibility Marte wouldn't show up, but still expected him to report. And after the game, Lovullo acknowledged just how little information he had. He didn't show up today, and he was put on the restricted list. That's as much as I know right now. He also said, I'm sure in time we'll start to uncover and unravel some more information. He looked emotional and frustrated throughout the interview. I will throw it up right here.
I love him and I care for him. It'll be okay.
What would the struggle for your pitchers today?
He is fine. Ketel is fine. He is fine. I want you guys to know that I just care for him on that level. So does everybody in that room.
So as you can see there, in a very emotional Torey Lovullo saying he loves and cares for Ketel Marte. We don't know any more than Torey Lovullo what is going on in this specific situation. As bizarre as it is, maybe he knows more than he's allowed to tell us. And in the end, he doesn't have to tell us. If this is a family-related situation, he doesn't have to give us anything. So I give him a lot of respect for going through that interview and answering a lot of the hard questions. And despite him being emotional, I couldn't help but feel he looked a little frustrated in that interview. Torey Lovullo is in the last year of his contract. He may not be the Diamondbacks manager next year, and there's a good chance if he doesn't make the playoffs, he's not going to be the Diamondbacks manager. They're in this playoff push, and I think he understands the locker room is affected by this, the morale. They played a really poor game tonight, and I just think he wants him to show up for his manager that has stuck up for him time and time again. And I think there's another quote that was put in to Steve Gilbert's article from Torey Lovullo that kind of summed it up. Quote, we deal with a lot as baseball managers and coaches and teachers, Lovullo said. So, sometimes you get disappointed. Sometimes you get let down, but we're going to figure out how to work through this. It was unfortunate that he wasn't there tonight, Arizona general manager Mike Hazen said. And a lot of the discourse on Twitter was when Torey Lovullo mentioned that he knew about this in the morning, that it instantly turned to Torey Lovullo's fault. There's some people that if Torey Lovullo drops a pencil, it's his fault. If Ketel Marte goes 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, it's Torey Lovullo's fault. Everything is Torey Lovullo's fault, according to some people on the internet, according to some people on Twitter. And it's incredibly frustrating because as much as we don't know what's going on, I believe Torey Lovullo handled this as well as he possibly could. Clearly, he's trying to stick up for his player. Clearly, he's showing remorse and caring for his player. And that's really all you can ask from the manager. He really tried to, I believe, throw him a bone there by keeping him in the lineup until the very last minute and then having to make the change because he didn't show up when he was supposed to show up. He's paid a lot of money to at least communicate with his coaches what's going on. We don't need to know the reason Ketel Marte is missing games, but certainly the organization and the coaches do, especially your manager who, like I mentioned, sticks up for you time and time again when this has been somewhat of a recurring issue. Now, this is really the second time that this has been a big blow up like it was last year. Hopefully he's not in the Dominican Republic this time around, but this is probably going to be a situation where Ketel Marte misses a few games here. I don't expect him to be in the lineup tomorrow. There's going to be some fallout from this. And how does he earn back the locker room from completely going ghost? Geraldo Perdomo said in the postgame, they talked to Geraldo Perdomo, who historically has also stood up for Ketel Marte. Last year, he went in a big rant talking directly to the media very angrily. Stop messing with Ketel Marte. He just wants to play baseball. Stop making all these stories up. Stop doing all these things. Geraldo Perdomo said he had no idea what was going on. It was a very stark difference between this year and last year when Geraldo Perdomo went out and defended his friend, his mentor. He wasn't able to do that this year because he has no idea what's going on. And to me, that is the big concern. Beyond what happened to Ketel Marte, as a player, as the leader of a franchise, you can't go ghost. And I think, like I mentioned, there's no other job in the world. There's no other job where you can go ghost on your manager, on your boss, whatever the case is, and just get away with it scot-free. But Ketel Marte is held so highly in this organization that he's able to, in some ways, get away with it. But I just think the timing, for me, the timing is a big, big problem. And I feel for Torey because he had to answer all these really bad questions and had to try to come up with some excuses when there really are no excuses because Ketel Marte didn't leave him with any. A big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break. This back school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back school shopping experience can be. It starts with a few items on the list, then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things you didn't see coming. It adds up fast. When your school says your child needs a calculator, headphones, tablet for class, and somehow you're buying another one before the semester is halfway over. Since when did kids need this much tech for third grade? So remember, with Amazon's low back school prices, just spend less less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back school on Amazon and spend less on your kids. But I think especially the timing is a really big issue. This is where the Diamondbacks as an entire organization, we talked about just Mike Hazen, what he said, he's disappointed on the day. This is where the Diamondbacks have to be frustrated. They are fighting for a playoff spot. Every game matters. And now they've got another major distraction involving one of their best players. Marte is also having a down year by his standards. Let me remind you, 249, 314, 446 slash. That's a 760 OPS. And Arizona, like I mentioned, last year when this all happened and it turned into an offseason of trade rumors, has already reported exploring the possibility of moving him. So does this mean the Diamondbacks want him out? Absolutely not. But between last year's situation, the trade rumors, and now another incident involving a lack of communication, it's fair to wonder whether this relationship has become increasingly complicated. In my opinion, I believe this is a ticking time bomb with Ketel Marte. If they've already talked about maybe potentially moving him based on last year's situation, if the rumors were true of internal conflict about Ketel Marte and his seriousness for this franchise, I think there's something to be said that I just don't think this organization is going to put up with sort of these situations, these blowups anymore. If it comes down to a situation where Ketel Marte is going ghost on the team, and he's done this before, and there's other things that they're concerned with his playing time and how much he wants to play. And then on top of that, if he's a declining player, I just think it's a ticking time bomb with the Diamondbacks. And Ketel Marte is an Arizona legend. He is probably one of the greatest, maybe top 5, top 4, maybe top 3 Diamondbacks of all time. He's going to be up there in those hits, home runs list for a long, long time. Ketel Marte has done a lot of very good things with his team. He led this team to a World Series appearance. Ketel Marte is an Arizona legend, and that's never going to change. But it's very frustrating that this is the way that it potentially could be going out, because I think however they view him, if they're able to stick up for him time and time again, which they have, I think this may be somewhat of a breaking point considering where they're at in the season. But I think for now, the priority should simply be making sure Marte is okay and figuring out what's going on. And none of this should be used as an excuse for what happened on the field. And we'll talk about that in a second, but I do really feel for Ketel Marte. Hope it was nothing serious. It just is frustrating, the timing of it and just kind of how everything transpired. And it turns into one big distraction with the entire world, ESPN, Bleacher Report, The Athletic, all of these big companies and media just making a big deal out of it when in reality, maybe a text, maybe a call, maybe an explanation might have done. This brings back last year when I was talking about the timeline of Ketel Marte having a history of doing this in the past. Diamondbacks fans remember the Marte situation from 2025. July 15th, 2025, Marte's Scottsdale home was burglarized while he was in Atlanta for the All-Star game. 3 days later, Arizona placed him on the restricted list for personal reasons. Lovullo said he had limited contact with Marte and needed a couple days away. July 18th to 20, Marte went to the Dominican Republic, and the team was expecting him to remain away as long as he did. Communication surrounding this return became part of the controversy. July 20th, he returned and was reinstated. Marte later revealed roughly $400,000 worth of belongings had been stolen. So when Marte suddenly doesn't show up to the ballpark and is placed on the restricted list again, it's naturally going to bring back those memories. And of course, that led to a lot of the fan outrage, the internal the internal outrage that was reported, and who knows if those were true or not, which eventually led to Marte being shopped in the offseason. And up until the trade deadline, or close to kind of the month before the trade deadline, there were a lot of trade rumors around Ketel Marte as well. And even up until the trade deadline, and Diamondbacks fans had to kind of be like, hey, we're contending right now. You guys realize that they're not going to trade away their star second baseman. But I did want to talk about some of the speculation online because it was crazy. And sometimes the fan base drives me nuts. And sometimes the national media seems like they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to Ketel Marte and when it comes to the Diamondbacks in particular. Things got even messier when only insider Hector Gomez incorrectly reported that the Diamondbacks had designated Ketel Marte for assignment. It didn't seem like one of those fake AI accounts. I personally hadn't heard of him, but I knew I had maybe 50 mutuals with him on Twitter, so it obviously was a respected reporter. He almost certainly confused Ketel Marte with Starling Marte, who is DFA'd that morning. So just really bad timing on a false report. I'm not sure if he had remembered in the morning that a Marte had been DFA'd and he just decided that must be what it is, and nobody knew about Starling Marte being DFA'd. I don't know what the situation was, but it definitely brought some confusion there. And the mistake only added fuel to an already chaotic situation. Then Bob Nightingale, historically so right when it comes to all of his tweets and his facts, he said, quote, "The Boston Red Sox were one of the teams who made a strong effort to acquire Ketel Marte during the winter. Now they're seeing why the Diamondbacks were motivated to trade him." That's a pretty in my opinion, that's a pretty irresponsible conclusion to draw when we don't know what Ketel Marte is dealing with. It could be a family member passing away. It could be another situation with his home. We never really know what the situation is. So to be critical and your first thought being, wow, that's really irresponsible of Ketel Marte to miss this time. And it's really why he's missing games. See, I feel like we can be mad at the fact he didn't communicate. That is certainly one thing, but for, I don't know, Bob Nightingale to assume that Ketel Marte meant bad things by this, that's another thing. I felt like that was a really mistimed tweet from a national baseball reporter who's giving his opinion. If you're sourcing something, that's another thing, but it just felt like kind of a shot when all Bob Nightingale has done is tried to misreport things about Ketel Marte for the last year and a half that people have to continually come out and say that's not true, even though Bob Nightingale says it does. And that's the biggest thing here. We don't know what the personal issue is, so I'm not going to speculate about it. And I think when we get to Torey's reaction, there's a lot to be said about the situation and why I certainly feel for Torey, because it feels like his trust was mishandled in this specific situation. So we're going to talk about that. Make baseball season more this year on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform. You can trade on every single game. Looking at a league-specific matchup for tomorrow, the Diamondbacks are trading at a 40% chance to beat the Red Sox, meaning in a $100 trade, you would pay out $251.02. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON and get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Now, with what happened with Ketel Marte, I think it might have softened the blow a little bit about what happened in this game in particular. But I'm of the belief that major leaguers should be able to look past distractions. Some of these players on the Diamondbacks teams, Corbin, Carroll, Geraldo Perdomo, Gabriel Moreno, have played in the biggest stage there is to play on baseball. So I think you can look past distractions and think the Diamondbacks have to look past this. They have to play baseball. They're still in a ginormous series for their season going forward. They're in the NL wildcard race. They still have to play a game. But because regardless of what was happening behind the scenes, Arizona played one of its worst all-around games of the entire season. And this was coming off such a high of taking the series against the Braves, bouncing back from that really ugly Rocky series, an 11-1 loss to Boston. There's very few times in the history of the show we will ever spend the first 20 minutes talking about something that's not the game. But this is certainly one of those scenarios. They were outplayed basically everywhere. And whether the situation with Marte affected the team, as Lovullo indicated, he'd been concerned with it throughout the day. There's no way to know. Geraldo Perdomo sort of dismissed it, that there was no distraction. They just want to go out and play baseball. I don't totally believe that. I think something where Torey Lovullo was thinking about this from the moment that he got up. He was very emotional about it. He said it's been a long, long day. It's hard to have not affected the team. And that's why definitely there's some frustration here about what happened. But the performance overall was very, very ugly. Mitch Bratt got the start in this one and took a huge step back. He was so good across his previous 3 outings, 18 innings pitched, 8 hits, just 3 earned runs, 15 strikeouts, and 8 walks. And even in his last start, after the walks were pretty high throughout his stints throughout his entire resume up in the big leagues, he had just 1 walk in his last start. It felt like a step in the right direction that had been the issue that made you think that he needed to go down. And then, of course, he dealed against the Padres, 7 innings pitched, just 2 hits allowed. But it looked like he was continuing to improve start and start, but this time just wasn't great. 3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. The command wasn't there, and neither was the swing and a miss. 51% zone rate, 57% strike rate, and just 1 whiff on 30 swings. But the biggest concern, in my opinion, was the velocity. Almost 2 miles an hour down on every single pitch. The fastball sitting around 89 miles per hour. For a pitcher who already doesn't have overpowering velocity, that's a major difference, especially when the command isn't there. Hopefully it's just one bad outing, because what we've seen from Bratt since his promotion has been incredibly encouraging. The reason you felt so good about this rotation is you're finally getting Michael Soroka back after having to survive Cole Drake and Mitch Bratt being in the rotation, but now it feels like you're not worried about Mitch Bratt anymore. So you fix the Cole Drake issue, and Mitch Bratt is figuring it out up in the big leagues. You can give Corbin Burnes the time that he needs, and even when he does come back, you don't need to have super high expectations for him, because also you got a long relief guy in Zach Littell in case things go bad. And things did go bad, and Zach Littell did not mend the issue in any way. Zach Littell was outstanding in his Diamondbacks debut. 4 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 earned runs, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts. But Boston was a completely different story. 3 2/3, 11 hits, 8 runs, 6 earns. The Diamondbacks played some really bad defense, 0 walks, and 2 home runs. The Red Sox scored in every inning from the 2nd through the 7th. 9 of their 16 hits went for extra bases, 7 doubles, a ridiculous 7 doubles. Sanain Rafaela hit 3 straight doubles. It was I couldn't believe how many doubles they were hitting in this game, and 2 home runs. It was a nightmare outing for the guy Arizona brought in specifically to provide length. Now, I will give him this. He did go 3 2/3, so it's not like he was horrible. He did his job. He really ate the blows for the Diamondbacks on this day, so they didn't really have to go really deep into their bullpen. They used Dennis Santana for a single out after that. And then in the 8th inning, Ildemaro Vargas became Arizona's best pitcher because he threw a scoreless inning. He had the best ERA out of anybody on the day. But the Diamondbacks used Mitch Bratt, Zach Littell, Dennis Santana, and Ildemaro Vargas. So even on a day where they get blown out, luckily they save all of the bullpen. So certainly not the worst result. That's why you get Zach Littell. Even if he does get lit up in a game like this, you don't have to go into that bullpen. So I guess if there's something positive to take out of the game, it would be that they have a fighting chance going forward in these next 2 games. And then overall, there was just 0 offensive fight, but it felt like from the first few innings, there was no reason to have an offensive fight. I mean, the Mitch Bratt just didn't have it, and the deficit got deeper and deeper. And obviously there was a cloud over the team's head from what happened in the pregame, especially for a lot of these guys, Corbin, Carroll, Geraldo Perdomo, Gabriel Moreno, that have been around Ketel Marte their entire career. They think of him as mentors. So for him to just dip at the beginning of the game, not a good sign. But the offense, 4 for 30 on the day, 1 walk and 8 strikeout. That's it. Jordan Lawlar made his debut, and we'll talk about him and Justin Martinez in a second. What should have been the lead of the show. I should have started with that. But of course, the drama, all of that happens, and I have to push it back and into some of the talk about all the negatives first, which I don't like doing. Jordan Lawlar 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He also had a ground ball up the middle that was robbed. That should have been a single. Just Jordan Lawlar's luck that the first ground ball he puts into play, the shortstop makes a miraculous play. Jose Fernandez called up out of the blue pregame, 1 for 3 with 1 strikeout. Tim Tawa had 2 hits. Gabriel Moreno had 1 hit, extending his hitting streak to 11 games, and that was about it. So one piece of good news, I suppose you could say, is the Diamondbacks didn't lose ground in the standings. The Padres, Cardinals, Marlins, and Pirates all lost. Arizona remains 1 game around behind San Diego. I believe the Phillies won their 4th straight, so they have a game up on the Padres, meaning the Diamondbacks are 2 games back of the Phillies for that 2nd NL wildcard spot right now. The Cubs won in miraculous fashion. I don't think anybody's catching them for that top NL wildcard spot right now, but definitely could be worse. All the teams, the 3 closest teams below the Diamondbacks lost, and the team above the Diamondbacks lost. So not exactly the way you want to stay in the playoff race, but considering how ugly this game was, the pregame, it could have definitely been worse. Now, Justin Martinez and Jordan Lawlar are back. That's the big news. That's the best news of the entire day that you can really talk about within this game. This was supposed to be a great day for Diamondbacks baseball. Finally getting healthy. Justin Martinez and Jordan Lawlar were such big parts of that. Justin Martinez, it's been so long. Tommy John, our 102-mile-per-hour flamethrower closer that you're hoping can be the closer by the end of the year. This is some actual good news. Arizona reinstated Justin Martinez and Jordan Lawlar from the injured list. Martinez is back for the first time in 14 months after Tommy John surgery. He was electric in 2024. 2.48 ERA, 2.59 FIP, 8 saves. His fastball averaged over 100 miles per hour, where his splitter and slider generated at least 45% whiffs. He made 4 rehab appearances, 4 innings pitched, 0 hits, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts. The fastball was back in triple digits. I wouldn't expect them to immediately be the closer, though. The Diamondbacks have shown with Michael Soroka, a few other guys, they want to work these guys back up to health, and they've made it very clear with Justin Martinez. I honestly thought that might have been a situation where Dennis Santana pitched kind of in the 7th inning of a blowout game, the perfect opportunity to get Justin Martinez there in a low pressure situation. But I'd like to imagine he'll be in some low pressure situations going forward in the coming days. But all in all, really excited to see Justin Martinez back. He was getting to 102, maybe close to 103 in some of his rehab outings. So cannot wait. If he can get back to being that version of himself, that's a massive addition to this bullpen. And then Jordan Lawlar returns. Lawlar is also back after missing 2 months with a hamstring strain, busting it down to first base. Lawlar, feels so bad for him. It feels like he's gotten so unlucky. Of course, kind of broke his hand early on in the season. That's why he had the 60-day IL. This is his second IL stint of the season. He's only played 12 MLB games this year because of injuries, but in those games, he hit .316 with a .409 on base percentage. He also hit 5 home runs in 4 games during his Amarillo rehab stint. Arizona desperately needs another offensive option, and Lawlar gives them one. It felt like he was finally breaking out before he had got injured, running out that bunt. He was hitting so well, and he had a spot locked down in center field every day before Tommy Troy came up, before Ryan Walshman came up, before they were giving some of those guys opportunities. Who knows if Ryan Walshman even would have came up if Jordan Lawlar was still healthy up until this point. But now, of course, Jordan Lawlar will be back in center field. He played a little second base during this game when Yeltsamaro Vargas had to go in and pitch. So maybe they still like him partially in some sort of defensive situations. And then Corbin Carroll is back. He won NL Player of the Week for his game last week. Honestly, I was a little surprised. I didn't think Corbin Carroll did quite enough to earn NL Player of the Week. I suppose I didn't even think about that possible scenario. But Corbin Carroll was named NL Player of the Week last week. 9 for 22, a 4.09 average, and a 1.519 OPS. He had 3 doubles, 2 triples, and 2 home runs. His 15 triples are more than double anyone else in MLB, and now he's chasing a very rare 20 homer, 20 triple season. Only 8 players have ever done it, and nobody has since 2007. Carroll has 18 homers and 15 triples. Considering how bad things have gotten for him, this is a massive development over his previous 40 games before this breakout. 161 average and 47 strikeouts. We worried so much about Corbin Carroll. He's had such a weird year with his splits, how he's hitting lefties left on left as the best left on left hitter in baseball right now, but he's hitting about 220 versus righties when historically he's never really had a problem with that. Some of the offseason swing changes that he's made to hit lefties better have affected how he's hit righties. So it's nice to see Corbin Carroll look like himself again. It would have been nice to hope for the same for Ketel Marte, but who knows when we're going to see Ketel Marte get back on track? Who knows when we're going to see Ketel Marte back on the field for that? I'm sure by the time you're watching this, there's already some news in the morning about what happened to Ketel Marte, or maybe some updates about when he could potentially be back. So we'll update you on that. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the next episode. But thank you again for listening to Locked On Diamondbacks. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow me on X at G1 Media, posting a ton of good Diamondback content on there. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you get your information, posting clips and more reactions on there. And thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find me all night Locked On MLB Game Night, every game, every night until World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you again. Go Diamondbacks.